Well, that was a rough day for the S&P.
I know, here we are, right, bumping along the bottom. Again, there's like inflation concerns, whether it comes from possible more tariffs out of Washington or whether there's some concerns. We saw that in the consumer sentiment numbers, concerns about inflation, higher prices among folks out there.
Well, I think if we're talking crucial moments of the trading day, I think 10 a.m. when we got that UMich sentiment number that came in below expectations. Look, tariffs are starting to weigh on consumer sentiment. That message is clearly getting through to consumers.
Absolutely. I like what Davis Araby just told us. Tax cuts, deregulation, government efficiency, all those things are 3 steps forward. But tariffs are like 1 to 1.5 steps back. And what have we gotten concrete details on, at least a focus on, in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the Trump administration?
2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks.
Feels
wow.
like a year.
Yeah, I know. It's been tariffs, right? That's what he's been focused on.
Yeah, the question is, though, is it real or is it a negotiating tactic, right? Like, what's the ask for the other country? Well, I'm taking a look at what we've learned throughout the week in terms of retail buying, right? Mom and pop investors coming in pretty strong on 2 to 3% declines in terms of a buy the dip. Do we see that then coming in on Monday as well?
Yeah, whether or not the enthusiasm continues, right, and helps to prop up kind of the markets here. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, we're still in earnings season. We're not quite done, so maybe that helps or hurts it.
Robinhood reports next week.
All right,
Alex, so
we are wrapping up the Friday here on this trade when it was a kind of a choppy trading session for the S&P. It looks like the S&P is going to close down by about 0.9%. You're around the lows of the session. We're also looking at the NASDAQ off by about 1.3%. The Dow up by 1% as well. Guys, just want to point out that small caps not spared, down over 1%. The Mag 7 also not spared, down by about 2%. The only upside there, NVIDIA and Meta.
All right, guys, looking at the S&P 500, most names in the index, no surprise, lower today, about 364, losing ground on this Friday, 140 Scarlet to the upside.
And there's a lot of red when you look at the sector performances as well. That's the IMAP for you, all 11 groups in the red. Consumer discretionary off by 2.5%. Of course, that does include Tesla and Amazon. Communications services down 1.2%. Materials off by 1.2%. Your better performers, energy basically unched, and utilities and industrials losing just about 1/3 of 1%.
Wow, that's a really clear chart. For those on radio, it's all red, the IMAP here at
Good
the
luck
Bloomberg.
with gainers.
I got a few.
Okay.
Uber, folks, finishing off its highs of the session was up more than 9% at its highs today, but finishing the day with about a 6.5% gain. So it was among the top gainers that we saw certainly in the trade today. News, Bill Ackman, his hedge fund, Pershing Square Capital, owning 30.3 million shares of Uber.
I like that. Let's call it that.
Uber. Okay.
Oh, my God. Uber. It's so Friday. So we're talking about, based on Thursday's close, let's try and get it straight, owning a little over 1% of the company's market valuation, basically thinking it's well-managed or one of the best businesses in the world, but definitely undervalued. One more name for you, Take-Two Interactive, guys. This is among your top gainers, number one in the NASDAQ 100, top gainer in the S&P 500, 14% higher in today's session. The company reported earnings after the close yesterday, full-year net bookings guidance, and reiterated its plan to launch the highly anticipated Grand Theft Auto 6 in fall of 2025. Anyway, that was enough to push this one higher.
Okay, you got the gainers. I got the decliners. No shortage to choose from. I did want to go with Amazon, though, dragging the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 lower, falling 4%. The company did warn of capacity constraints in its cloud computing division, AWS, despite plans to invest $100 billion this year. Andy Jassy said growth will be, quote, lumpy due to challenges securing sufficient hardware and electricity, and that power capacity and chip supply are limiting the ability to bring new data centers online. AWS revenue did jump 19%, but Jassy's warning on those growth constraints overshadowed that fairly strong holiday quarter. And then Newell Brands, it's the parent company of Rubbermaid, Yankee Candle, Sharpie, Mr. Coffee, Elmer's Glue, and many more, down 26% today.
Nice little mix.
A
Yeah.
lot of companies.
Yeah.
At one point, shares fell the most ever in a single day. At the close, though, the worst day going back to
What an ugly
2017.
chart.
Newell Brands issued a disappointing preliminary annual outlook, projecting a steeper than anticipated decline in full-year sales.
Yeah, taking a look, also just guys, Arnold mentioned Tesla, down 11% this week, the worst week since October, I know, right? I'm taking a look at the bond market. Stuff did happen there. It was actually quite an interesting trade. Sell-off all across the curve, though. We're obviously off the lows of the session. A couple things to point out is that next week we get 3 10s and 30-year auctions, well over $100 billion worth of supply coming online. Also, 4.5 is what many investors are watching with that 10-year yield. If we break above that, do we make a run to 5? 5. So there's some technical stuff going on here as well, guys.
Yeah, we also get some inflation reads next week, right? CPI, PPI. We also get retail sales on inflation day, on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
It could be inflation.
It might feel like inflation
stuff,
day, yeah.
Right? If you're trying to buy flowers, they're pretty
Or
expensive
chocolate,
right now.
guys.
Well, can you imagine a
Or
card?
chocolate.
The only thing inflated is my love for you.
Oh, please, no.
Pretty good, right?
No, that's bad. Don't
All
say
right.
that. Just buy the chocolate.
Why was there so much silence?
Our
there?
producers liked it. Our producers liked it.
Finley
Yeah,
is
but
the
our
only
producer's
person
not
who
married. Don't
acknowledged
do that, Tim.
Come on, Finley, you know better.
Tough crowd. Tough
Yeah,
crowd.
but I think the point is pretty valid. Valentine's Day will be expensive because cocoa prices are high. So, like, that's the real deal, there, guys.
All right, we also got some earnings coming next week. Deere & Company, Molson Coors, Applied Materials, Coinbase, and then Robinhood Markets. So, Alex, maybe we'll get a read on the retail investor from Robinhood.